Hello, I'm Kate, and I'm just your average Eurovision viewer and enjoyer, though with every new year this seems like more and more of an understatement. Uh-oh. I don't go in depth with all of the songs or any kind of backstories, but Eurovision is the one constant every year that I always look forward to and glue myself in front of the TV screen for. Well, last year was an exception, and Dad was furious, but at least the Netflix film kept me company. But it could never replace the hole that was left in my heart. So I'm not a hardcore fan, and yet it's my event of the year. Therefore, I got to wondering, why is it that I love Eurovision? Furthermore, why do people as a whole love Eurovision so much? Is it the values of peace, love, and unity? Do they have a magnet that attracts the chemicals in us? Or have we been brainwashed by the Western Europe and all these liberal ideals to distract us from the real issues? I'm sure the reasons are different for everyone, but today I want to explore all the various components that are a part of the Eurovision appeal. First, we need to take a little lesson in history, both for context and because some of the ideas trace back to the very beginning. After World War II and amidst the Cold War tension, the European Broadcasting Union, or EBU, was created, mainly to exchange radio programs between countries. As a lot of international matters go, the content was soon largely centered around sports, so clearly something had to change. Modeled after the successful Festival della Canzone Italiana di Sanremo, which united Italy after the war divisions, a new song contest was introduced in 1956. The first competition took place in the capital of neutrality, aka Switzerland, in Lugano, uniting 7 participating countries: Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, and even more tuning in from other regions. Each country had 2 entries in the battle for the most beautiful European song, and what's more, they had to be sung in their respective languages. But of course, it wasn't just about the songs. It was also a way for the EBU to measure their reach and celebrate the unified European culture, and none other than capitalism. This was also an opportunity for each of the participating countries to show their national values, like Germany, who was now a changed and open-minded country, never mind all that Nazi business. However, modernity was not awarded too highly. At the core were secure values, tradition, and nostalgia, which trace back to the 19th century with promenade walks in the open air before the intervention of the 2 world wars. As time went on and more countries joined Eurovision, new ideals were popularized, and the contest was being pulled in 2 directions, resembling 2 ways of coping with crises: appreciation of the times long gone and a desire to move on. Now I'm fast forwarding to 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. The winner of the next Eurovision was Italy, with a song about a dream of a united Europe. Other entry names that year included Frei zu leben, or To Live Freely, and Keine Mauern mehr, or No More Walls. Not at all on the nose, is it? However, around the late 80s and early 90s, the song contest had lost its initial appeal. It had become repetitive, and a lot of the acts were out of touch with the regular music trends. If it wasn't for the Irish and their enthusiasm, winning 4 times in 5 years might be a good indicator of that, Eurovision could have withered away. That's a scary thought. But with the introduction of new countries from Eastern Europe and televoting, Eurovision got back on its feet. And now it's a tradition hard to compare to any other, with the first few notes of the theme song to Doom lighting up every cell in my body instantly. All throughout the history of Eurovision, the values have always been about unity and diversity, uniting countries after wars and other kinds of separations, showing that we do all care for the same simple concepts, yet at the same time exhibiting the diverse experiences of European cultures and how this variety is beautiful. Even when there were just 7 countries participating, there was still a lot to explore because they all sang in their native languages. But with more and more new entries, Europe got to see what makes each country and their culture unique. Because of social media, the value of unity is even stronger now. There is no other lighthearted event that has brought together people from all over Europe and even beyond to my Twitter feed. It truly shows the power of music and the internet. There are a lot of components that go into diversity, but nationality and ethnicity rides at the front in Eurovision. In 2012, Russia was represented by Budanovsky Babushka, who finished in 2nd. This act played not only into the national values of Russia and Eastern Europe, but also nostalgia and childhood memories that it brought to the region. The most obviously ethnicity-rich region has to be Southeast Europe. Every year, the acts are almost entirely filled up by beautiful dancing women who are not afraid to show some skin. While this may be a good strategy to draw in the audience, the self-exoticization tends to present the region as more primitive to Western Europe, creating a separation that is not even accurate. The embracing of the ethnic values diversifies the contest and attracts more viewers, but in turn, it also offers more to make fun of. There's a lot of management of expectations in Eurovision. Going into a new year, you can already predict what kind of performance each country is going to give, so one of the potential values could be familiarity. Sweden has the strong voices and pop hits, Portugal will most likely sing in their native language, and the UK will send someone who will end up in the last place. On the other hand, there is the surprise factor, which is breaking these expectations. I come from Latvia, which in its 21 years of participation has had 5 last places in the semifinals, and while that may sound like a train wreck of a country, you can never really anticipate each new entry. I got inspired by this Vulture article to view the Latvian act in a different, more whimsy way. So what we can get out of the semifinals? We've already won once, so might as well bring a new, unappealing performance every year. Beatboxing on 2 separate occasions, singing in 4 different languages, pirates, beloved artists turn into national shame, and baking cakes. No one is doing it like Latvia. All of this is also played into the downside of nationality, which is mocking these values and traditions. But it is actually an important aspect of Eurovision. While Eurovision has always put forward the importance of the songs, in reality, it's always about the countries they represent, more commonly with the terrible performances. It doesn't really matter if the song or the singer is bad. The embarrassment is almost always directed towards the country and their disingenuous representation. These songs were chosen, so clearly there must be something wrong with the judgment of the citizens. But sometimes the values are only applicable to the specific region, so when the song is brought into the universality the Eurovision stands for, it just doesn't translate. They are taken out of context and made into national caricatures. But if you watch Eurovision from a light lens, which should be the case, it's all in good fun. This is the one time in the year that you can make fun of European countries, because, at least in most cases, it's not about the countries, it's about their failed effort to deliver a good show. A common solution in the case of embarrassment is to keep a safe distance, oftentimes an ironic one too. The show has national commentators, and they, of course, offer different solutions, from abstaining from any kind of bias to full-on rants about everything that happens on and off stage. The latter used to be the case for the UK, where the well-known broadcaster Terry Wogan ridiculed Eurovision up to the point where his commentary became the show itself. He advised the viewers to distance themselves from the event, as if they were unwillingly participating in a cultural travesty. Wogan's commentary, while supposed to be neutral, did quite the opposite, reinforcing stereotypes of the diverse Europe, but not having the same sentiment towards the British entries. There are tons of people who do not want to be a part of the Eurovision spectacle because they believe it to be ridiculous, cringe, and politically driven, and that's fine. It's the truth. But who said that we need to look at Eurovision seriously? It really doesn't matter, and that's half the fun of it. Eurovision is the epitome of extra. Every year the hosting country has an impossible job to build a bigger and better stage. The designers have to find new ways to incorporate gemstones, glitter, and the occasional bodysuit, and the performers have to think of an unbelievable show. It's a celebration of capitalism. Even back in 2009, when Europe was deeply affected by the global financial crisis, no costs were spared in the event in Moscow. The stage was lit up by an estimated third of all the LED screens in existence at the time. Estonia, which was the first post-Soviet country to win Eurovision in 2001, hired a company from the UK to create a modern fairy tale. They wanted to differentiate themselves from the other Baltic countries, and also the rest of the post-communists, and to emphasize the Nordic values more, to prove that they were a changed country. It was a balance between the technologically advanced and the mystical fairyland. Which leads into the next point, escapism. A lot of this grandeur and fantasy covers up and distracts from the issues happening in Europe and beyond. That same contest in Moscow is a good example. While there were some clear messages of crisis and protest, ignorance reigned triumphant. The second place was taken by Iceland, with an act stage in the clouds, and the winner was Norway with Fairy Tale. Could it be any more obvious? Violins and rose petals took center stage, which has been the case in Eurovision for a lot of the time, perhaps not always too apparent. A lot of the time, the combination of excessiveness and silliness in Eurovision is a part of camp, which is an accentuation of the unnatural and theatrical. I mean, if someone says Eurovision, what is the first image that comes into your mind? I bet that for a lot of people it's the campy performances like Conchita Wurst and Fire Saga. Really, any theme that an artist is portraying is likely to get exaggerated. Even the more conservative countries are not safe. Just think of Verka Serduchka. This is a way for post-Soviet countries to change the image that is associated with them, and while Verka remained in second place, it is one of the most iconic acts up to this day. In many cases, camp borders with queer identities, as was the case with the Serbian winning act in 2007. Singer Maria was on stage, dressed in a more masculine manner, as well as surrounded by attractive women. Western commentators categorized the performance as camp, and Maria's sexuality was questioned. She was, indeed, a lesbian. I randomly stumbled upon this article about Eurovision being about queer joy winning, and isn't that the truth? In this century especially, the show has been a platform of and for queer people, and it only gets gayer. People dub Eurovision to be Gay Christmas, Pride 2.0, or more realistically, Pride 1.0. It's hard to say when the queer revolution began, but one of the staple events has to be Dana International, an openly trans woman, winning the trophy in 1998. Now, along with all the national flags of the participating countries, the rainbow flag is waved in the audience most prominently. The show offers a lot of visibility and inclusion, and it doesn't matter if the event takes place in the Netherlands, which was the same country to legalize same-sex marriage, or one of the countries further east. To me, Eurovision feels like such a safe space, and it gets even better when the performers themselves show their pride, support, or at least communicate an image that millions of queer people can relate to. I have seen many posts that the highest scoring acts this year just resemble different queer identities, and that just warms my heart. The most obvious queer victory was probably Conchita, which also brought a lot of controversy to the conversation. While most viewers understood the performance for what it was, an empowering ballad sung by a drag queen, some Russian politicians proclaimed this to be the end of Europe. It only took one bearded lady. A big part of the Eurovision experience is laughing in the face of adversity. Conchita's performance was criticized by the Eastern juries, but at the same time, the audience from the same regions loved it. Eurovision can actually offer the most democratic vote for countries such as Russia, and democracy is another value that Eurovision stands for, as well as Europe in general. Ever since the beginning, the juries have represented all the participating countries, and with the introduction of televoting, the democratic values have only increased. Everyone within the performing countries can vote for their favorite and make a huge difference in the final outcome. In a lot of cases, the opinions of the juries and the public are not the same, so by exercising your right and financial ability to vote, you can help the dorks or the anarchists rise higher than the professionals let them be. Give the people what they want! The thing about Eurovision is that everyone is an expert. Anyone can tune in and start judging the performance from the lyricism to the shortness of the singer's dress, and it will be okay. You don't have to have any credentials because in Eurovision, everyone is a judge. I think this might be one of the highest values nowadays because it allows a lot of freedom. Twitter is the most fun around this time of year because it offers a chance to laugh at the ridiculous, be validated by your favorite act being supported by an army of people, and to fire yourself up over a random stranger claiming that Måneskin is the worst Eurovision has ever seen. Again, none of it matters because it's just a silly contest. Music is almost always a case of subjectivity, so real expertise is just another thing we've invented. As the last point, I want to talk about numbers and statistics. Here, it's not a matter of being a nerd or not, because the voting announcements, with all its numerical values, is one of the most exciting things about Eurovision. As far as I know, this is actually one of the most unique things about the contest. In fact, Austria didn't participate for a few years in the 2000s, but the voting results were still broadcasted in the country, and a lot of people were tuning in. Already in the beginning, the votes were announced individually and publicly, which created a tradition of transparency. After the show, all the votes are laid out, both for finals and semi-finals, so you can see just by how much your country missed the mark, or won at large, whichever suits your situation best. The voting system and the announcement of it has changed multiple times, and the one that is present now was confusing for me at first, but I've come to love it. I personally don't care too much about the jury's opinion, and I think it gets dragged out a little too much. But then comes the televoting result, which flips it all upside down, and I am sitting on the edge of my seat. And this year was so iconic, I really don't know how any other one is gonna top this Eurovision. Maybe it's because we lost a year. So that's the end of that. I would love it if you commented what your main reasons for loving Eurovision are. Maybe I missed something. Now it's time for me to go probably watch another My Top 100 Eurovision Songs from 2010 to 2021. Ciao! If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe for more, and do anything else that your heart decides. Just remember to be nice. Have a wonderful day.